the executive chef of Monticello Farm Table. The holidays at Monticello were a time for family, friends, and celebration. During Jefferson's time, the focus was less on decorating and gifts and more on socializing and merriment. Like many of us do now around the holidays, family and friends in both the free and enslaved communities of Monticello gathered to socialize and share a meal. Dinners for the Jefferson's family and guests were prepared at Monticello by enslaved chefs such as James Hemings and Edith Earle Fawcett, who were not merely skilled in their craft, but were culinary artists in their own rights, bringing influences from African and European traditions together to create amazing new dishes that are an integral part of American culture to this day. James Hemings created a macaroni and cheese recipe that helped introduce the dish to America, a version of which I will demonstrate for you. I will build upon some traditional recipes from Jefferson's time and add a bit of a modern twist on them. Today we're gonna make a little hot cocoa, perfect for the holidays or for really any occasion while it's cold. I just want to point out we have a wonderful American Heritage chocolate mix made by Mars. We sell it at the shop at Monticello, or you can order it online with us. It's a wonderful mix and it's really easy to use. Or if you're ready to make hot cocoa right now, you don't have access to the product, I'm going to show you how to make it just with a few simple ingredients. We're going to use milk, cream, sugar, pure cocoa powder. Valrhona make an amazing cocoa powder, but you can also find it, I know Hershey's has a dark, special dark edition of cocoa powder that works really well as well. And we'll use a little bit of vanilla paste, so if you have vanilla bean, please use vanilla bean. So I'm gonna start by putting the milk, the cream in the pot. We'll put it on high to medium high. We don't want to make sure not to scorch it. I'm going to add the sugar and the cocoa powder right now. So I make a fairly thick hot chocolate. And again, to your taste, if you want to thin it out a little bit, you can put a little more milk, or you can cut down on the ingredients as well. This is totally up to your own taste. And I'm going to put a little bit of the vanilla in it as well. A little bit goes a long way. And then depending if you're serving this to the children or if you want to make it an adult drink, you can use your favorite liqueur to spike it. Would it be bourbon, pinch schnapps, whatever, or for the case today, we're just going to use a little Baileys. I think that'll be an amazing little thing. So we're going to bring this to a boil. I'll take a few seconds. While this works, actually, you know what? I'm going to make a little whipped cream to go on top of it. So we're going to use some cream. A little bit of sugar. And I'm going to put a touch of vanilla again. There we go. That's going to make a little noise. I apologize. We're going to start on slow and then we'll build up the speed on this. You can do it by hand as well if you want. So our hot cocoa is almost ready. Just want to make sure everything dissolved correctly. The whipped cream is ready as well. We're going to make 3 cups of hot cocoa. Okay. We'll try not to make too much of a mess. You notice I got silent, I'm concentrating. Then I'm going to teach you how to make a quenelle with a hot spoon. So quenelles is something that we learn to make way back in the days and used a couple different spoons to shape that classic shape, which is called a canal. But through the years, I learned that using a hot spoon, you can do the same thing by running it across the cream and making that perfect shape. So now we haven't quite spiked it, but you know what? I'll spike it right now. Oh. And I'm going to grate a little bit of chocolate on top of it. Voila, is your grown-up hot chocolate. So bread pudding traditionally back home in France is called pain perdu, which literally means lost bread. It was actually a recipe that was made in order to use old baguette or your country bread or anything you had left over. When it got too hard, back home you go to the bakery every day, sometimes twice a day. So if you have bread left over, you'll go in a pudding. You can also use older pastries, brioche, halal bread, any kind of milk bread. So today I'm using brioche. It's an amazing thing. You can make your own brioche, obviously, if you want, or you can go to your local bakery and get brioche. So now this works better when the brioche is actually start to get stale. So today I'm going to demonstrate how to make bread pudding or pain perdu. We're going to start with sugar and eggs. And when you crack your eggs, one thing to remember, the easiest way to do it is don't be shy when you crack the eggs, because if you do it too soft, they don't crack all the way and you end up having to fumble with it, open it with your fingers, and that's when you end up having a lot of shells. Although if a shell falls, you can always pick it up. It's not the end of the world, but it's a lot easier when you do it that way. So now we're gonna whisk this together a little bit. If you want a much richer bread pudding, you can actually add egg yolks to it. You could probably put another 2 egg yolks. But in the bread pudding I'm making, I'm also gonna make a sauce. I'm gonna show you how to make a bourbon sauce with it. So now this is mixed. We're gonna add milk and cream. I'm going to touch vanilla in it. And now your custard for the bread pudding is ready. Next step, we're going to cut a little bit more of the brioche. So we're cutting it in fairly big pieces, and don't mind using the ends as well. So it's a rough cut. Do not worry about it. And you may have to adjust the amount of brioche for the baking dish you have. And if you end up having too much, you can always use a second baking dish. So I have a baking dish right here. I'm going to put butter in it. There we go. Now I'm going to mix the brioche with the appareil, which is basically the mix. And it looks like I may have to make a couple bread puddings. Just let it soak a little bit. It's absorbing the milk, the cream, and the sugar. As you can tell, bread pudding is very, very simple to make. Okay, looks like the ingredients are together. We're going to pour it in a baking dish. We'll put some on the bread, and you have to press down a little bit on it. Here we go. We're going to pour some of the mix in it. I'm going to put a little bit more of the bread. And then we're going to bake this in a preheated oven at 375 for about 25 minutes. Usually leave the fan on as well. If you don't have a fan, you probably need another 10 minutes also to bake your bread pudding. Okay, we're not going to make it too high. Then we're going to pour the rest of the mix on top. And now this is going in the oven. Step 2, we're going to make the bourbon sauce to go with the bread pudding. So the bourbon sauce is egg yolks, sugar, butter, and bourbon. So we're going to start by melting the butter and the sugar together. And that's something you can easily do while your pudding is baking. And that'll take about 25 minutes also, like I said earlier. So I'm going to melt the butter just a little bit. So the butter is melting. We're going to heat up the butter and the sugar hot enough so it's actually going to cook the yolks when we put it over the yolks. And for the bourbon, for the amount of butter and sugar I have here, I usually use about 1/3 of a cup, but really, it's up to your taste buds, really. Okay. I'm going to put my egg yolks in the mixing bowl. And basically, when you start putting the hot liquid over the egg yolks, it's almost like if you were making a hollandaise. You're going to start cooking the yolks with the hot liquid. Now, a tip, if you're by yourself and you have nobody to hold the bowl for you, you can always use a towel, make a little nest, and rest your bowl in it so the bowl doesn't move. And so at first, we're going to just put just a little bit. And you see, it's almost like making a hollandaise. It's like you're making a butter sauce, basically. Okay, this is looking pretty good. Now, for the pièce de résistance, happy holidays. A little bourbon. I'm almost tempted to do an homage to Julia Child, but I won't. So the bourbon sauce is ready just the way it is right now. And it's almost time to plate a little bread pudding. And voila, the bread pudding is ready. Put a nice piece of bread pudding right here. We're gonna top it off with the bourbon sauce. And just because it's the holidays, we're gonna put a little bit of creme chantilly or whipped cream on it. Almost. There you go. Perfect treat. We're gonna make a modern version of James Aming's mac and cheese. Simple ingredients: milk, cream, butter, flour. I use the local cheddar. I like to use Parmesan for the nuttiness of the dish as well. And for pasta, I like to use a bigger Albo pasta or macaroni. Now, I already cooked the pasta, but I'll give you a couple of hints on how to cook the pasta as we go. So I'm gonna start a couple of things. I'm gonna put the liquids to boil. So usually when I start milk and cream in such a quantity, I always put just a little bit of water on the bottom of the pot, just enough to cover the bottom of the pot. So it would help it so it doesn't scorch. So I'm gonna add the milk and the cream. I'm gonna salt this right away, and I'm gonna put a little bit of nutmeg in there as well. A little nutmeg goes a long way. A little salt. I'm gonna let this go for now. Now on the other pot, we're gonna cook what we call a roux. A roux is a mixture of butter and flour. So I'm going to put my butter and we're going to start melting it. And then I will add the flour. And to make a proper roux, you need to do it on very, very low heat. And you need to cook it for about 15 minutes also. So when you look at the recipe from James Aming, from Chef, he boiled the pasta in milk. It was using butter and cheddar in the dish, and it was baking that way. So my adaptation, basically I'm doing a modern mac and cheese. I'm definitely using a local cheddar, which gives the flavor. I'm adding the Parmesan for, as well, the nuttiness of the dish. So it's pretty much the same ingredients, just in a different preparation. So when you cook pasta, I recommend that you salt your water. Your water should be taste like seawater. Should be salty. You also want to put a little bit of oil in it. So now the oil thing, there's a couple different versions of it. People say you don't really need it, and I believe you don't really need it. If you store your pasta, it won't stick, because when you put oil in the water, it floats to the top, right? But this is something my grandma used to do way back in the days, and I used to watch her do it all the time, and I don't want to change it. It's just one of those things that I just want to keep the same. And I probably don't need it, but it's part of my childhood memories, and I want to leave them like that. So now I'm gonna add the flour. We're gonna mix this really well. It's gonna make a nice little paste. So another tip about the cheese, I know it's a lot easier to buy grated cheese, but I highly recommend you grate your own. When you buy grated cheese, a lot of time they put different chemicals or potato starch, so it doesn't thick together, it doesn't make a clump, so it doesn't melt as well. Different melting point, different things. So I recommend you get your block of cheddar or your piece of cheddar and grate yourself. So one of the things to know when your roux is ready, and if you're going to be on top of it, I guess you can always cook it a little faster. Just make sure you keep on stirring it, watch it. You don't want it to turn color too fast. It needs to turn, you don't need color for that dish actually. But if your roux start turning color too fast, it's almost like making a caramel. You're burning it. So you don't want to burn it. You want to slowly have natural colors to appear. And when it's ready, it starts smelling like pie crust. And then, you can introduce your own twist to your mac and cheese as well, right? If you like a favorite fresh herb, you can add fresh herb. You can add bacon to it. You can add pretty much anything with truffle mac and cheese, very popular. Diced ham, Virginia diced ham, truffles. So the roux is starting bubbling a little bit, and the consistency changed a little bit. So we're gonna butter the dish as well. That's gonna go in the oven. A, I like butter. B, it's easier to clean, so it doesn't stick that much. So I'm making a little smaller mac and cheese right now, but you can make a bigger pan as well, or multiple pans of it. Okay, the roux is ready. I'm actually gonna turn it off right now. So another tip is once you introduce add milk to that pot of butter and flour, you just want to put a little bit at first because it's going to boil and raise because this is super hot. So be careful the steam doesn't get you, or if you put too much, it actually could boil over the pot. And you always start by using your wooden spoon because it'll be too thick to actually stir. And then as you put a little more milk, then you can switch to your whisk. So I'm going to pour a little bit of the milk. Let's see if I can do it without making a mess. Ooh, maybe. Okay. A little bit first. You see how it's boiling right away? I don't know if you could tell, but okay. I can switch to the whisk now. And we're going to add our cheeses. Le Parmesan, cheddar. Ooh, that is beautiful. And don't be shy with the cheese. It's a cheese sauce. You need to taste like cheese. Yeah. So I made double the recipe on the cheese sauce, so we can have it tomorrow. I want to make mac and cheese at the restaurant. So now same thing, you can put as much or as little. If you don't like a creamy mac and cheese, you can put less sauce. I like a creamy mac and cheese, so I'm actually going to add a little bit more sauce to this. Okay, now we're going to put some on our baking dish. And just because I think it wasn't quite enough cheese, we're going to put a layer of cheese in the middle. Now we're going to put more mac and cheese on top. Okay, in the oven for 25 minutes at 375. And here's the mac and cheese. Bon appétit. Merci.